What's up, guys? Welcome back to the PL Pod right here on Daniel Talks Football. I'm Daniel and we are back with another week and another podcast. In this podcast, we're going to be discussing all things Tottenham Hotspur, which is an awful lot at the moment. We'll get onto that in just a second. Before we do get onto that, I need to mention this is the first podcast back. Thank you for all the support over the World Cup. Must have at least had, nearly 5,000 views throughout the whole World Cup, and it's genuinely incredible. So thank you for all of the support throughout all those videos. A video pretty much every single day in December, which wasn't easy, or a video every day up until Christmas, which wasn't easy, and it took an awful lot of recording, including recording videos standing in the centre of Nottingham, so I hope you appreciated them. Yeah, we are back with podcasts, as I have previously mentioned on the channel in little videos here and there. These podcasts are now going to move into every 2 weeks, with obviously 1 week of podcasts then staying the same, and the second video will be 3 or 4 videos, just so that then we can change the content up on the channel a little bit and get some more recent content out. Say in the past format, I wouldn't be able to talk about Ronaldo, so we can now do that in the current format of the channel. Right, I'll stop doing admin stuff. And I'll move on to the guest we have on the line tonight. And it's a very, very big guest. It's a returning guest of the... a friend of the channel. He's got 16,000 followers on Instagram. And it's the Spurs News. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me back as well.
Of course, mate. You're a genuine pleasure to have on. And as I say, there's a lot going on with Spurs at the moment, which I'm sure we will get into throughout. And this is only the start of the big guests coming on the channel as well. We've got quite a few things on the horizon, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled, because there's something that could be coming, which could be massive. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. Right, let's get straight into it then. What is going wrong with Spurs?
It's a mixture of things, really. The fans are definitely becoming more aware of the ownership of the club and how they are influencing our football. It's also coming down to Conte. He's playing some pretty, I wouldn't say boring football, but I'd say it's not football that I take pleasure in watching every week when I turn up to the games. It's just a huge combination of little pieces coming together to put us in the position where we are at the moment.
Yeah, it's a mess, isn't it? And you mentioned Conte there. Last time you were on the channel, you said you were sure that Conte would sign a new contract with the club. Do you still feel that way?
As of 2 months ago, I think I said I was 99.9% certain. Now, it's probably quite a bit less than that, to be honest. It's a 50-50 for me. I think it comes down to both the club and Conte being in positions of power. If the club are saying to him, look, we'll give you the money after you sign the contract, then Conte's not going to sign it, because Conte's saying, if you give me money before the contract, then I'll sign it. So everyone's waiting for each other to pull the trigger first. And if it's a battle of egos, then we know what Conte's like. He knows he's a serial winner. He knows his value. So it's a win-win situation for him. He either gets a big new contract or he's free to pursue other things he wants to do.
Yeah, and what's happened there then? Is it performances? Because we know there's been things that have gone on beyond the scenes. His interviews have always been one that has puzzled many, with his weird random outbursts at times when there was that one interview where everyone still was sort of like Conte in, and he just sort of went, if I leave, I leave. And it was like, what? What's gone on? Because it just seems like something's just changed in the club and Conte's no longer happy.
Yeah, especially after games. You mentioned it there with his press conferences. When I get home after the game, I post a bit of sort of quotations from him, and I read some of the stuff he says. You think, what is this guy talking about? I'd say 90% of the fans are Conte in every game. We're screaming his name, Antonio. I think he's now starting to expose the club, however, expose the owners for what they're really there for. Majority of Spurs fans, including myself, aren't happy with the ownership of the club, how it's run. It's more of a profit club than a glory club. But I think behind the scenes, he knows he's exposing the club, and by exposing the club, he's using it as a way to get what he wants. However, Daniel Levy is probably quoting every transfer person he's dealt with, literally the worst person to negotiate with and deal with. So it's a big clash of personalities there. So I don't know, it's just not working out at the moment.
No, and we'll stay on the manager front because, as you say, it's a 50-50 if Conte goes or stays. From an outsider looking in, I genuinely think he'll go. I've looked at it and I just think I can't see him signing a new deal. It's not like if you were second in the table pushing for the title, I'd go, the Spurs board would give everything to make sure he signs on. I don't know if they particularly want that because he's a tricky customer and we know the Spurs board are like yes men. So, if he were to go, who replaces him?
I think there's only one answer here, to be honest, and it's Pochettino.
Okay.
He's a fan favourite, and he has been, even when he's not been at the club for the past couple of years. Don't get me wrong, I'm still Conte, and I'll back the manager till the end until things start to massively fall apart. But Pochettino is probably the most realistic option. He and Daniel Levy have worked before. Daniel Levy loves him because he knows with Poch he will get his way. He doesn't have to spend big money, and Poch pretty much just accepts that every time. We didn't spend for, I think, 18 months and 3 transfer windows at one point, which Daniel Levy was probably rubbing his hands together, loving life.
Yeah.
And even then, we managed to get to the Champions League final. So for Daniel Levy, he's going to go straight to Poch, I assume, and he's out of contract, so he's not going to cost him anything.
No.
And he's not going to demand a massive salary either.
No, and you look at the available managers, there's not really much out there apart from Poch at the moment. Well, Potter could be on the market very soon, but obviously he's now done with Chelsea, so you can't then go and hire him. Oh, could you? Could you get Potter? Because you've hired ex-Chelsea managers before. I was going to say you can't hire them if they're ex-Chelsea, but you've done it with Jose, you've done it with Conte. So is Potter an option?
If he was out of contract or if he got the sack, possibly, because again we've gone back to back with ex-Chelsea managers now with Jose and Conte, but Potter I think signed a 5-year deal or something ridiculous at Chelsea, so there is no way Levy will pay millions and millions to terminate his contract, even when he's not doing that well with Chelsea.
No, yeah, I think it would be a case of Bowley terminating the contract, to be honest, and then you lot possibly swooping in because you had that interest before, obviously, and we now was it after Nuno was sacked before Conte came in? Was it then that you were looking at Potter? Because obviously we all know about Nuno's incredible run with Spurs, which lasted 3 months, 2 months, and you were the worst side I think I've ever seen in that period. We will move away from the managers, though, because there's other things I want to discuss. And it does start with the board. And it starts with Paratici. I'm seeing his name everywhere. I'm seeing Paratici sort of, mentioned in all sorts of different formats. Especially this sort of legal issue that's going on. What's going on with Paratici? And is he getting fired? Is he getting arrested?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reports out at the moment, especially in Italy, which is where the allegations started due to his time at Juventus when he was actually there with Conte for some of it, to do with making extra money or sort of avoiding taxes on transfer fees and transfers to the club and out of the club. So there was talks about a month or so ago that he was actually sort of requested to come back to Italy so they could conduct questioning and do an investigation, but nothing's come of that. So whether that's been swept under the rug, Tottenham have basically told the Italian police to hush down and we'll sort it out privately. But as far as I know, he's still in and around the club. I was at the last few games over the last few weeks, some of the friendlies, and he was sitting on the bench as normal. So for now, nothing's happening. Behind the scenes, he might be speaking to a load of people. I don't think there's been many talks of getting rid of him. I believe Daniel Levy would only get rid of him if it came down to tarnishing the club and making the club look bad. So for now, I think we're okay with him.
Okay, because I must say, I woke up one day and I saw a load of reports about all this going on, and I was like, what's going on here then? Because you see that, and look, we all know that Juventus possibly aren't the best club when it comes to doing things by the rule book. They've been known to break the rules many times, and I looked at that and I thought this would not surprise me if something has gone on here. So it's one that I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if he were to go, how big of an impact would that have on the club? Because obviously he's doing the football side now, with Levy sort of stepping back and just focusing on the business side.
Yeah, so when he came in, our head of recruitment at the time, Steve Hitchen, he left pretty much straight away because he knew, look, Paratici's come in to essentially take my role. So he left straight away. So without Paratici, we'll be out with a head of recruitment. Now, our recruitment is not the best anyway.
No.
We've had the odd signing that's been good. So someone like Bentancur and Kulusevski are hands down one of the best signings in recent years. We've had a couple of youngsters as well. Papa Matt Sarr's been playing recently. He looks
Mhm.
quite good. Other youngsters like Spence that don't play
Yep. We'll get onto him
whatsoever.
later. We'll get onto him later.
Yeah, whatsoever. But I do think he would be a big miss because I do think he was a big part that Conte came to the club in the first place. They were good mates, best friends at Juventus, worked together. So he probably sort of said to him, mate, look, come here, we'll do a job together. I'll be here with you every step of the way. And if Paratici does go, that could be another reason Conte says, look, I actually don't want to stay here when it gets to the end of the season.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but no, it's an interesting one. And before we do sort of end off this segment, it's been a lot of Italian chat, and I want to finish this off with a positive. I know it's rare. Destiny Udogie, I don't quite know how to pronounce it, but I want to discuss this one here instead of the transfers, because obviously he is your player. He's currently loaned out. He actually looks really exciting. I've actually seen a little bit of him so far this season in Italy. And he looks really, really good. Is this a guy that's going to come in and sort of play for you first team next season? If Conte's still there, is he going to be Jed Spence point two? Or what's because he looks excellent. And look, also, if you're not going to play him, send him to Leicester and we'll happily have him.
Yeah, I think you need him, to be honest.
We do.
Yeah, so Udogie, yeah, we sent him back to Udinese, the club we brought him from. I think we signed him for about 20 mil, just under in the end. He was a Conte signing by the sounds of things, especially with Spence. Conte came out and said it was a club signing. With Udogie, he said, look, this was the player that I wanted. So I'm hoping when he does come back in the summer that he does get some good game time because Young at the moment is not reaching the level I want him to or fans want him to. And Perisic eventually will start to deteriorate because of his age. So I'm hoping he can come in, get a couple of years with maybe under his belt, learn from him. He looks like a really exciting player. I did a post on him the other day. I think in 2022 he was statistically like the second best fullback in the top 5 leagues, which for a player of his age is insane. So yeah, I'm really excited for him, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've looked at him. I've seen him a little bit throughout the season, and yeah, he looks top class. So that could be a positive amongst all of this Spurs negativity. What we will do is we'll take a short break there before we come back and discuss transfers. So let's do that. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I'm Daniel and we are back with another video. In this video, we are going to be talking about Tottenham Hotspur and how to fix Tottenham Hotspur. Before we do get into the video, please make sure to like the video, comment down below and also subscribe to the channel. This is also part of a full podcast, so if you're listening to this in podcast form, then I apologise for me suddenly just telling you to like and subscribe halfway through, but please do that. If you haven't seen the full podcast with Spurs news, make sure to go and check it out. It will be linked in the description and you'll also be able to find it on the channel. So yeah, we'll get straight into it. How to fix Tottenham Hotspur. What are Spurs looking for in Jan?
So our main 2 targets seem to be an attacking midfielder and a right wing back, which is being reported by quite a lot of top people. I agree with both of them, but I also think we need to defend at least one centre back because the majority of our centre backs at the moment, bar Christian Romero, are not great. Clement Longley's doing okay, but he's not going to be your starting centre back that you want every week. So probably the main 3 are going to be right wing back, Cam, and a centre back.
So I want to go through them then. So right wing back, you've got 3 right wing backs, and you still need another one.
Definitely, the quality of our right wing, or the quality of one of our right wing back is subpar, and for some reason Conte seems to love him. Emerson Royale, he must have his family hostage or something. I don't know why he plays as much as he does.
Are we convinced he's Brazilian?
I think he's a fraud, to be honest.
I look at him and I think, have you been born in Stoke?
It's just so poor. I don't get it. Every week, I'm there every week, and I sit with the season ticket holders next to me. We just sit there in disbelief and think, how is this man on the pitch again? Because he's so poor every week. Surely after a couple of games for any player, you'd think, okay, maybe he's not best for the team or he's not best in this setup. But it's been the same for like a season and a bit now. It's just, why does he keep playing? I really don't know. I struggle to get my head around it because Doherty has come back into the fold a bit more after the World Cup, which I'm happy about because it means Emerson's not on the pitch. But even yesterday, we played Portsmouth and he started Emerson Royale over Spence. And you think that is the perfect time to start a youngster,
Yeah.
and he still doesn't start him. And even when he subbed off Sessegnon, he put Emerson Royale left wing back. You think he can't even play right wing back. Why are you putting him on the other side? He's just, yeah, I don't know. So a new right wing back is something that we massively,
Yeah.
massively need.
I mean, we'll talk about Spence probably when we talk about players that need to leave, but I'm pleased that we can sort of have a good therapy session for you, because it really sounds like you need it. Spence sounds awful. Genuinely. I'm sorry you've got to watch that week in, week out. And this is coming from someone who's had to watch, Johnny Evans and Wilfred Ndidi pass the ball back to back to each other for 15 minutes straight. You said a centre-back as well. Is Longley going to be signed permanently in the summer? Has he just not worked out as I kind of expected he wouldn't? What's happened there?
Well, Longley, to be honest, has actually been okay. I remember somebody said, I can't remember who it was, before or as we were signing him, it was if you get the Seville Longley, you're laughing. If you get the Barcelona Longley, then you're crying. And I think we've got a bit of a mix of both. He's been doing okay, better than a couple of other players in the team. I wouldn't say he's made my mind blow, but he is an okay player. But as far as I know, we don't even have an option to buy in the loan contract, so we may not even have the option unless Barca come to us and say, look, do you want him permanently? Because we know how much financial issues they're in. But again, I think he is one of those players that we can sign for now, but we're going to need someone better eventually. So he's only going to sit on the bench if somebody else comes in.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to sign him, you'll be able to sign him. It's Barca. They'll take anything for him and go out and spend 50 million on someone probably even worse. You'll be able to get him for probably 10, 15 million, but as I say, we'll get onto that when we look ahead to the summer. You obviously mentioned 3 positions there, an attacking midfielder. I think that's blatantly obvious. I've discussed that on the channel before. You've got 4, 5 defensive midfielders around the club and no attacking ones, which seems like quite a Conte squad, actually. Who do you need to actually sign then? Do you have any names for me? What kind of profiles would you be looking for in these kind of positions?
Yeah, so one that we actually touched on, I remember a couple of months ago when I was last here, is Pedro Porro. Now, the interest in him has skyrocketed. Like, all the sources are saying now that we're really interested in him and we want him and he wants us. But his Sporting have essentially said, if you don't play the release clause, you're not having him. Now, the release clause is only, well, I say only, but 45 million. Now, for a young player who looks class, you pay that in an instant, or big clubs would pay that in an instant. If Chelsea came along and thought, yeah, he fits our system, fits this, fits that, they'd pay it the next day, the way that they do business. And I wish we did it similar. So Pedro Porro, definitely one for the right wing back. James Maddison is always one that's touched upon, as you'd be delighted about.
I would be, yes.
He, again, he's a top player. Maybe injuries are a little concerning at the moment because he's had a few. He had one just before the World Cup. I think he's picked up another one or still got one from the World Cup.
They made it worse. The England camp made it worse. Definitely
for Daniel Levy, he likes buying players at a good value and that suits him. And if he's buying a player or signing a player on big wages that is going to be injured every week, he's going to turn his nose at it. As for centre-backs, Bastoni, one we tried for in the summer but didn't want to come. We'll probably try for him again if Conte's still there. I feel like if Conte goes, then our chances of signing him will just disappear completely. And Guardiola, but after the World Cup he's had, I'd be very, very surprised if we got him. We had our chance in the summer, we didn't do it, and we're paying the prices for it now.
So you're saying Maddison and Porro for January. Do you have a centre back that you would like to sign in January, or is that one that you're possibly going to have to leave until the summer?
I would love to sign Bastoni or Guardiola, but again, they're probably quite unrealistic targets. I would like to sign a centre back, but I just really don't think we will. Okay. Daniel Levy. January's a typical window, isn't it? Nobody spends massive in January, so I just can't see it happening.
Well, this window seems different. I've looked at a lot of sides and I've gone, Leeds have apparently sent off a 30 million bid for Rutter today from the Bundesliga, and Liverpool have spent their money. So, to be honest, I can see clubs doing business. I can see you not doing business. Well, I could see you picking up Maddison. For you would need to pay extra. It would probably be 55, 60 million. I'm going to be honest. It would be a big chunk still, because even though he's got 18 months left in the contract, it's halfway through the season. and he's the difference between survival and relegation. And for Pedro Porro, I've seen that link a lot. So if you were to bring in those two, would you be happy with that?
Yeah, definitely. They're both players that the fans, I get the feeling, both really like, and they're both players that we need. We've seen Pedro Porro play at the Spurs Stadium, and he looked class, along with James Maddison as well. The problem is with Maddison is, as you say, he probably will cost about 50, 60 million, and Levy won't pull the trigger because he knows if he waits another 6 months, he'll get him for probably half of that because, again, then he's only got a year left on his contract. So if we could get both of them, I'd be really happy, yeah.
I must say I have to disagree with you on getting him for half price. We saw with Youri Tielemans last summer. It'll probably
Very
be
true.
50. It might be 5 million less. It won't be less than that because we drive a hard bargain for our players that are going to leave for free anyway. Who needs to leave then? As my voice cracks. Who needs to move on from the club this January? You can look at loans, you can look at permanent players, but obviously you're bringing two lads through the door. Which ones need to move on?
Yeah, so I'll just go through position
Yeah.
really. I think goalkeepers at the moment we're doing okay. I wouldn't say that Lloris needs to move on yet, but we definitely need to start looking at a successor soon. For defenders, Jaff Tanganga's been playing a little bit here and there, but he hasn't looked 100%. I think when he came in for Mourinho a couple of seasons ago, his first game against Liverpool, he looked class, and I was really excited for him. But he sort of hasn't really lived up to that. So I know AC Milan were interested in him, possibly sending him on loan. Like, look what a move did for Tomori in the Serie A.
Yeah.
Something similar to that. Maybe a loan just so we can get him back afterwards. I think that's it for defenders. As much as I'd like to get rid of a few more, say Eric Dyer, Davinson Sanchez, I just don't think it will happen.
Not in January.
No, definitely not in January because there's no way Levy's going to go out and spend big to get a replacement at the moment. So I just can't see it happening. Moving on, sort of midfielders, wing backs, Emerson Royale. I'll drive him to the airport myself. I cannot believe this guy is still at the club. We spoke about him a minute ago, but he's unbelievable. I do feel bad for him in some ways because he does get booed every time he comes on or off the pitch. And as a person, I feel bad for him, but his footballing ability does not exist. It does not exist. So get him as far away as possible. I don't really care where he goes. I'd give him away for free, to be honest, just cut our losses. As for loans, I would like to see Spence get some game time, even if that means sending him out on loan, maybe even back to Forest, just so he can get a bit more game time, sort of challenge ex-Spurs man Serge Aurier there. There's also been talks about Sarr going out on loan. The way he's played in the last couple of games he's had with us, he's been class, so I'd love for him to stay. He looked like a good backup option or even a starter ahead of someone like Skip. Moving on to Skip, he probably needs a bit of a loan as well. He looked great at Norwich, but he's come back to Spurs and hasn't really had all that, to be honest. There's definitely a player there, but whether Conte's the person to unlock it at the moment, I'm not sure. So say Skip comes back at the end of the season and Conte's not there, then you might find he's doing quite well. Moving on to sort of our forwards, there's also talks of Brian Hill going out on loan or even a permanent deal. But his cameos in the last few games, he's looked really good as well, filled in for Kulusevski as much as he can. Not as good as Kulusevski, but he's done what he can for a little player like him. So I think now he'll definitely stay. Lucas Moura is probably the only other forward that would potentially move on. He's a bit of a strange one. Just before the World Cup, he had the odd minutes here and there. And after, he basically hasn't been seen on the pitch at all. He's sitting on the bench, but there's no reports that he's injured or anything like that. He's just left out of the squad. I get the feeling with him, it would just be a case of running down the contract, and then I assume he'll move back to Brazil, probably in the summer.
Okay, so out of them sort of six lads you've just named, you would go Spence, Sarr and Skip out on loans, and then Tanganga, Royale and Moore out on permanents?
Yeah, that'd probably be the case.
Fair enough. And then we'll look ahead to the summer. So presume that business gets done in January. Obviously, then you'd have Spence, Sarr, Skip come back in the summer. Tanganga, Royale and Moore would have gone out permanently, and Maddison and Porro would have come in. What then do you need to do in the summer?
We need to sign some top quality players. The problem is with Spurs is we sign, well, what most of the time are pretty average players. We need to sign some good quality, top quality players. We need that right wing back in Pedro Porro. We need an attacking midfielder because we've already got Basuma, Højbjerg, Bentancur that can all play that defensive role. We need someone that can actually unlock the defence and do something once the ball is reached the midfield or just past the midfield. So we just need to sign some players that would be just have an instant impact and are not investments for 2-3 years down the line where we can make some sort of profit on them.
Okay. So, do you have any names for me then? So obviously you've said centre-back. You said centre-back in January. If we aren't looking to bring in one, you'd then look to obviously bring in a centre-back for the summer. You will have obviously all the lads coming back from loan who are currently out, people like Reguilon and Udogie. So, you've said a centre-back. What name would you like there? And then obviously before we discuss things about a goalkeeper possibly, would an extra attacker possibly be something the club would look at? More attacking midfielders alongside Maddison? What sort of players or profiles would you want?
Yeah, so especially for a centre back, if we're talking realistic targets, I really like Pau Torres from Villarreal. We were speaking to, I think, him or his agents in the summer, and nothing really came of it. But he's a realistic target that we probably could get again if we went out and said, "Here's the money for him." I think he would come to us. So
Okay.
I would like to see him because he's a big defender, he's a good defender, and someone I think would fit in that Conte sort of system. As for goalkeepers, I mentioned Lloris. He's getting on a bit now. He's 36, I believe, just turned 36-ish. So a replacement for him is going to be needed soon, especially when our backup is 34-year-old Fraser Forster. So as much as I like Forster, he's not going to be Lloris's replacement at all.
No.
I can see us going for a decently young keeper again, so we don't have to spend money on a lot of goalkeepers. It was reported today that we're interested in that David Raya from Brentford,
Okay. Yep.
their keeper. He looks okay from what I've seen. Bit small, which is a bit like Lloris to be fair. But he's a decent shot stopper from what I've seen. Also, Pickford has been spread around a little bit. Again, not sure if I'd take if it's England Pickford, then sure. But if it's Everton Pickford, then probably not.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's just a couple of people that are getting on a bit and are going to need replacing eventually. Yeah, an attacker definitely as well. It's something we probably need. Kane and Son, as much as I hate to say it, are getting on. Kane's 30, Son's 30 as well, I think, or Kane's 29. And Son, especially this season, has been such a shadow of himself. It is almost unbelievable. So maybe just someone to egg him on a bit because we just have no luck with injuries, especially with Kulusevski and Richarlison getting injured every other week at this point. Just someone to be there as a backup just in case, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So, if at all possible, could I have a name for a goalkeeper and an attacker? Because then obviously at the end of the window, we can look back on this and either go, you are correct and you'll look great, or most likely, which is what happens with everyone, you'll have egg on your face.
Sure. So for goalkeeper, I'd probably go with that David Raya.
Okay.
I think a move to a bigger club than Brentford. I'm not saying Brentford aren't big, but would definitely be a talking point, and he could look to force a move. And I would be happy if he did come in because I do rate him quite a bit, and especially if he's working with Lloris, as a World Cup winner. He's been at the Spurs for ages. You can learn from him for a little bit and sort of embed himself in the team. As for an attacker, it's a bit of a struggle because we spent so much on Richarlison. I think it was about 50 million.
Yeah.
We just need someone there to back up in case. We spoke about him actually last time on the podcast as well, that Yeremy Pino from, I think, Villarreal as well. So we could be on a Villarreal rate here. But he is a youngster, so he suits the Spurs transfer target. He's someone that you can invest in and look to make something on. And he's just a good young player. It was reported as well that we were interested with him, so we could see a double deal for both him and Torres at some point.
Okay, so there we go. So according to the Spurs news, over the next 2 windows, Spurs need to bring in Maddison, Porro, Torres, Raya and Pino. If that happens, you lot are going to be scary. And then outgoings for the summer. Obviously, you'll have all the lads coming back from loan as well. Which lads need to be sold? You'll have, four left backs at the club when people come back in the summer. You'll then obviously have 3 right backs. If you're bringing in someone like Paul, you'll have 4 right backs as well. Who needs to move on in the summer?
Yeah, I'm gonna say his name again, Emerson Royale. If he's still
Just in
here,
case, yeah.
which he probably will be, I want to make sure he's out by the summer.
Hmm. I'll
Enough
put him in
said about
bold.
him.
I'll put him in bold.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Um, I think when Udoji comes back as well, if he lives up to expectations like he is at Udinese, doing
Hmm.
really well, we could look to move on Sessegnon because
Okay.
I think we could get the money back we paid for him, about 20 to 25 million, I
Yeah.
think, just because English tax and
Hmm.
he's still of a decent age. And he's an okay player, but for Spurs, it just hasn't really worked that much. He has a good game every 1 in 5, 1 in 6 games, maybe. And that, for a top class team and a top class coach, he's just not good enough. So Sessegnon will probably look to move on. There's definitely a few youngsters I think will go out on loan. There's a midfielder called Alfie Devine. He's
Heard
quite.
of
I
him.
think we brought him from Wigan for about 300,000 a season or two ago. He was actually supposed to go out on loan in the summer, but he picked up an injury just before, and then the club who he was going to pulled out and said, "Look, it's not worth us taking him."
Hmm.
So he could look to go out on loan. I would like to start to move on a couple of older defenders as well, maybe Eric Dyer,
Okay.
because he was good last season or okay last season, and this year he just hasn't been the same. Similar for a lot of players on our team, to be honest. So if we got a decent price for him, I wouldn't be sad to let him go. Similar to Davinson Sanchez, I think Davinson Sanchez has the qualities to be a good player. He's got pace, he's strong, he's big, but for whatever reason, he just can't do it. Really, it just doesn't work for him. So if we got a decent price for him as well, I'd look to move him on.
Fair enough. Okay, so there we go. That is the Spurs news official Tottenham transfer window. We'll have to react to this after the summer transfer window and see how everything's gone. But thank you all for watching this video. The podcast will continue, so I'm not rounding off from that. But if you've watched the video, thank you. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you all again in the next one. Let's go. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I'm Daniel, and we are back with another video. In this video, we're going to be ranking all Tottenham Hotspur players. This is part of a podcast which went out on Wednesday, so if you haven't checked out the full podcast, make sure to go and check it out. There's lots of Spurs content in there, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy it. We are joined by the Spurs News, and we are here to rank all Tottenham Hotspur players. Right, we have 5 tiers, as you can all see on the screen if you're watching in the video. We have goated, great, good, mid, and sell this bloke now. We will start with Christian Romero. Where would you put Romero?
Romero for me is a go-to player. How we managed to get him, I'm not quite sure. He's just a quality centre back, especially for us. He makes everyone else that we have in defence look like 5-year-olds, to be honest. So goated for me, especially.
Goated. Fair enough, all right. And obviously, he got that big move from Atalanta. Are you happy? Because it was a big money move, wasn't it? It was 50 million in the end.
Yeah, it was 40, 50 million in the end. I think they did a bit of a deal with Juventus where Atalanta made a bit of profit off of it and something like that. So, but it shows, I think it should put a statement to the board and say, look, we spend that type of money and you get a quality player back. And probably in the team, especially the signings that we have made, is one of the better value for money players.
Fair enough. All right. We'll move on to Højbjerg now.
Yeah, so this season hasn't been as great for him, especially compared to last season. He was playing really well. He had a bit of Mourinho time as well. He played well then. For some reason with Conte, I don't know if the 5 and the wing backs next to him works for him as much. He seems to drop into defence a lot, so as soon as the wing backs push up, and maybe one of the defenders, because Romero likes to push up as well, he seems to just slot in at centre back. So that could be a bit of a reason. He's not used to playing in that position. I've put him in mid for this season because he hasn't been as good as he can be.
Fair enough. And he was a weird signing, wasn't he? Because he signed from Southampton for a fee that then involved Walker Peters going the other way. Obviously, you've got right back issues with, Emerson, as we'll get on to. Would you take that swap back if you could?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, because while Walker Peters is a good player, I don't think Højbjerg is worth the swap back. I rate Højbjerg more than I do Walker Peters because I think that if we wanted to go and spend the money, or we could just use Jed Spence. Look, Conte, we have Jed Spence in the team. we could just use him. So I'd just stick with it for now. I'm happy with Højbjerg.
Fair enough. All right. Then we have the Spaniard, Hill.
Yeah, Brian Gil is what I call him.
Fair
God
enough.
knows how to pronounce his name.
Yep.
But yeah, so he hasn't had too much playing time up until very recently with all the attacking injuries that we had that I mentioned earlier with Richarlison and Kulusevski. Son hasn't been on the best of form, so there was once or twice he replaced him. He's been good, to be honest. His few cameos, once he starts getting some more game time, he's looked better.
Hmm.
The only problem with him is because he is such a small person, he does just get bodied off the ball quite easily. But again, that's something he can work on because he is still quite young. From what I've seen of him, I'll say he's a good player. He
Hmm.
could be great, but not at the moment because I just don't think we've seen too much.
Fair enough. And obviously, when it reaches Brian Gill, he was a player that you spent a fair bit of money on, and obviously came into you guys as a young player. You look back on this transfer now, and is he? Does he deserve to be in this Spurs first team squad? I don't mean that in a harsh way, but with this sort of attacking talent a team like Spurs should have, is he the kind of level where he should be there, or is I don't want to say a sale right now because he's a young player, obviously, but is he an end kind of goal for a Spurs rotational player?
Gil he's definitely got talent,
Uh huh.
100%. When you see him on the ball, he dribbles really well. He makes some good passes. I think, as I say, the only thing that lacks in his game is the physicality aspect.
Hmm.
He's got all the talent. He knows what he's doing. Conte even said he was born to play football, but he just needs to be that bit bigger, which obviously he can't really help.
Hmm.
But I think he does deserve to be where he is at the moment.
Fair enough. All right, and then we move on to the captain, a guy that you probably do need to replace, Hugo Lloris.
Yeah, so Lloris is a strange one. He has a really good game one day, and then the next game he essentially passes the ball to them like he did with Aston Villa.
Hmm.
But then when we played Crystal Palace, he cleared two off the line and made a really good save. It's such a strange one. He's so up and down, and that may be reflecting his age. He's 36, he's getting on a little bit now. He's also been at the club for 10, 11 years.
Hmm.
For this season, I'd say he's been mid because we know what Lloris is like. He has kept us in a couple of games, but he has definitely made a lot more mistakes than he has in previous seasons as to give him goals away and sort of essentially gifting the team an advantage.
Fair enough. Next up, we have Ben Davies. I think that is. Yeah, it's Ben Davies.
Ben Davies under Conte has been a completely different player. It's really strange. With Mourinho, especially, he just played left back.
Hmm.
I always said he wasn't a left back. He's a left-footed player, but he's not quick enough. He's not. He doesn't adapt well to being a full back. So playing him at left centre back for him really, really worked, and he's been a really good player under Conte. I can't say he's been at fault for too many things. He might have had the odd mistake, but for me, he's been a great player.
Great player. Fair enough. All right. Ben Davies and great. That's not something I thought I'd be saying a couple of years ago. Um, Ryan Sessegnon.
Cess is a weird one. I mean, when he came in, he's a young guy, really excited. He played really well for Fulham. He was one of the top goal scorers, I think, in the season after we brought him. For some reason, I suppose it just does not work. Whenever he plays, he's a shadow of what he was at Fulham. But then he
Hmm.
has the odd game where he does quite well and might get a goal or an assist. But he just doesn't work for us. Maybe he'd be better as a left back or even as a left winger, but there's no chance he's going to get in the attack with the players that we have.
Hmm.
I'd put him in mid because I wouldn't want to sell him,
Hmm.
but he's not been that great this season.
Fair enough. All right. And then we move to a guy that you've said you think will already move on in this podcast, Lucas Moura.
Lucas, we haven't seen a lot of him to be honest this season, so it's hard to judge. Maybe he is trying to force some sort of move behind the scenes that we don't know about. It's a bit difficult to tell, but I would just sell him at this point
So,
because if he is causing issues behind the scenes, you want to get him out the club to stop sort of a backlash. So I'd sell him as much as I love him and what he's done for the club. I think now is the right time for him to go.
fair enough. And then we have the guy that's on loan with you guys, Longley.
I'd rate him good, to be honest. I think when he came in, everyone was a bit like, "Oh, I don't know about this one. Is he going to be worth it?" Because we are still paying like 120 grand a week of his wages from Barca, which is less than 50%. So he's on a big contract there.
Yes.
He's been doing okay. He's been good, as I say. He comes in to sometimes replace Ben Davies or even replaced Eric Dyer recently, playing at a central centre back, and he seems to be pretty good. I would be interested in signing him on a permanent for the right price, obviously. But yeah, it's been good.
What is that price?
The max I'd pay for him is probably about 15 million. I
Okay.
don't know how much he has left on his contract, so obviously it'd depend on that a little bit. And then also we'd have to get his wages down big time because there's no way we'd be paying him 250 grand a week because
No.
that's similar to what Kane's on at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, about 15 million and the right wages.
Fair enough. Then we've got Bentancur, one who's actually really impressed since he signed for you guys.
Yeah, Bentancur is going straight into goated as well. He is different gravy. When he came in from Juventus, he was sort of a bit of a fringe player. He'd get the odd game here and there, but not too much, as I understand. And for us, he's been absolutely insane. Everyone loves him at the club. He's just runs that midfield like he belongs there. He looks like he's played in the Prem for the majority of his career, even though he came in less than a year ago. He's just a really good joy to watch, and also recently started adding goals to his game as well. So I love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, with Bentancur, he's been a player that, while he was at Juve, I thought he looked alright. You know, he looked like a solid centre mid option. And then he signed for Spurs, and I was a bit like, that's okay. He might do alright. He'll probably move on in a couple of years. He's fine. Reminded me a bit of Arto. I didn't know what kind of player he was. And then he came to you guys, and he just looked excellent. And that's clearly, you know, the Conte sort of special there.
Yeah.
He's looked really, really good, and I've been impressed with him. Next up, we've got a guy who I don't think you particularly like, considering what you said so far, and it's Eric Dyer.
Dyer this season has been, again, he's a bit like Sessegnon. He's been up and down, up and down. He's definitely had more downs than ups, especially with the other week just having a massive slice at the ball, giving the opposition a chance at a corner. It was Brentford, and then they scored from that corner, which is typical Tottenham. Being a shadow of a player he was a couple of seasons ago under Mourinho, he was playing really, really well. Even last season under Conte, he was having a good season, and there was talks about him signing a new contract. But this season, I don't know whether it's Romero becoming as good as he is showing him up a little bit, possibly, because he is just getting better. But for me, I'd have to put him in mid for now, because again, I wouldn't sell him yet until we get some sort of replacement.
Fair enough. Next up, I think no, that can't be Bissouma. I generally don't. Is that might be Pape Matar Sarr? If it's not, then I apologise, but we'll say it's Pape Sarr.
Sure, we'll go for
We'll
Sarr.
go with that. Yeah.
So Salah has only very recently started getting actual game time, and I absolutely love him. He's only 20 and he looks really, really good in the midfield. He's comfortable. He does make the odd mistake, don't get me wrong, especially against Portsmouth yesterday. He overhit a pass here and there, but he's running about all the time trying to win the ball back. He looks like a really good player, so I would love to put him in goated, but we haven't seen enough of him, so I'll put him in great for now because he just does look like a solid, comfortable player.
You would put him in great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. Next up, I'm gonna give you the option to create an extra tier here, to create a sixth tier. It's Emerson Royale.
Emerson gets his own tier.
I will.
I know people might say that I'm being harsh on him, but you might not watch Spurs as much as I do every week. He is so unbelievably poor. It doesn't comprehend with me. Now, people might see it as, oh, you're trying to use him as a scapegoat, blah, 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 but the level this guy is just it's non-existent. I'm sorry, Emerson, if you're listening, but please stop playing football.
Yeah, I've created the new tier, and this is called Emerson Unbelievably Poor.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sums it up. There's a quote there on Emerson. How much money? You know what? I'll ask you this. As a fan base, just a prediction here. How much do you think you could raise to get Emerson out of the football club? Because I'm genuinely thinking it could be in the millions.
I agree with you, to be honest. I think some of the players might chip in as well. with the amount of money they've got, I wouldn't be surprised if Kane chucks in a healthy donation. Whenever I post a bit of news about him possibly leaving or just talking about the way he's played, the amount of people that offer to drive him to the
I've
airport or
seen.
offer to pay for him to get a taxi or something like that, yeah, he's just. I feel bad for him, as I say, because he does get booed a lot and he is a person, but we have to judge him on his footballing because that's what he's employed to do. That's what he's
Hmm.
paid thousands and thousands for, and he's just not a good player.
Yeah, in the preparation I did for this podcast, I had a look, and I was prepared for some Emerson hate. I yeah, I think it's fair to say I was prepared because yeah, it didn't look like people particularly are fond of him.
They're not fans, no.
We'll move from one player on the right hand side that people aren't fans of to someone who they are. It's the ginger from Sweden. It's Kulusevski.
Kulu, yeah, is such a fan favourite.
Hmm.
Everyone loves him. He came in, he's still technically on loan, which will be made an obligation probably in the summer
Hmm.
or even this window, maybe.
Fair enough.
Again, for a decent price. He's still young, 21, 22. I think he's only actually a month older than Phil Foden as well, which is a
Mad.
weird win to think about.
Hmm.
But yeah, he goes straight into goated for me because whenever he does play, I posted a couple of stats on him
Hmm.
the other day. We just play so much better with him. Everyone seems to be much more confident. They want to get the ball up the field. They want to attack. He can break down attacks as well. We just look so much better when he is on that right wing. So yeah, he's got to go and goated.
And he's also got a great song.
Exactly.
Genuinely, I hate saying this as a Leicester fan. I hate appreciating Spurs songs, but it's a very good song. However, and you didn't think you could get through the full podcast without mentioning it, who finished third in the two-horse race is the better chant. So, just throwing it out there. Just reminding you, you know.
No comment.
I didn't think I'd get one, to be honest. We'll move on before you leave the call. Fraser Forster.
Forster, he's only had the odd game here and there. Actually, to be honest, I think he's played about two or three.
Hmm.
Hasn't had much to do, really. He's never come on as sub during a game due to an injury or something like that. Uh, when he has played, he's been all right. There was definitely against Brentford the odd. I think it was the first goal. It was really an odd goal. It took a deflection and then he was walking the wrong way or something like that. So he couldn't do much about it. But I just put him in mid for now because
Mid.
he hasn't had enough
No.
fair time. Maybe if we go further in the FA Cup, but he hasn't had enough fair time to play really.
Fair enough. Then we've got... I'm, I think he's the favourite player of all Spurs fans. It's Son.
Son, for me, he's got to go straight into mid. If there was a tier between
Wow.
mid and sell this bloke, I would put him there because this
Wow.
season he has been shambolic.
Hmm.
Compared to last season, Golden Boot winner, scores for fun. He bagged that ridiculous finish against Norwich on the last day to draw the Golden Boot with Salah. Uh, he's just been nowhere this season. He did pop up with three goals. Oh, it's against Leicester City, wasn't it? Yeah. He popped up with three goals against Leicester
Yeah,
City
cheers, mate. Cheers.
in 20 minutes.
Hmm. I was going to say,
But
I thought he's looked good this season.
apart from that, he's just not really done much. I suppose with his injury, with his face mask and stuff like that, he keeps saying that he can't see the ball well, hence why he throws it off, but people keep telling him to put it back on. But he just hasn't been anywhere. If we're talking about, rather than a team level, we're talking about individual level and his ability, he's been nowhere near where he should be. So he's, if there was a tier between mid and sell, I'd put him in there, but he'd
Put him
go
in there.
mid for now.
Wow. Okay, and then we move on from there to another right back, Doherty.
Doherty hasn't had a lot of game time. He's had a decent amount, but not a lot compared to the Emerson Royale tier.
Hmm.
Don't know how he keeps playing. But in pre-season, he had a good pre-season, scored a couple of goals, and then he also scored against Palace the other day as
Hmm.
well. I suppose he's one of those players that when you have the current right wing backs that we have, or the ones that we don't play, he's probably your best option out of the lot.
Hmm.
So I'll put him in mid for now because when he was at Wolves, he did look class, and that's why we signed him. Hasn't really replicated over here.
No, fair enough. And then we move on to Basuma.
Basuma's been a bit of a letdown, to be honest. We signed him, well, when we signed him, people were really happy, 25 mil. He had a year left on his contract. I thought, wow, that's okay. That's actually a good move, especially the season that he just had with Brighton, or the seasons that he had with Brighton, even because he was consistently a good player for them. Conte said he struggles tactically to gel with the team. Maybe that's because he's more used to a midfield three. Not too sure. He hasn't really opened up on anything like that.
No.
I put him in mid for now
Hmm.
because he just hasn't been anywhere near as good he was at Brighton. He shows the odd spell. I think he came on against Liverpool when we played them just before the World Cup, and he looked pretty good. But he just doesn't play to, again, what his ability he has.
Fair enough. All right, and then we move on to Jeff at Tanganga.
I probably put him in Selham, to be honest. I
Okay.
think we got an offer from AC Milan for about 20 to 30 million, and we might need to cash in on him because he doesn't look like he's going to do, well, he doesn't look like he's going to fit in the team at Spurs. So, for his sake, if he wants to play consistent, like top level football, I think he has to be sold. And I do like him as an academy product. He's come through the ranks and he's earned his place in the team, but I just don't think he'll ever get to that starting centre back role.
No, fair enough. And then we've got the guy that hasn't played, apart from about 10 minutes all season, Jed Spence.
I love Spence so much, even though he's played 5 minutes and I don't even think he knows I exist. But he is a good player. He might have the wrong attitude in Conte's eyes, but you can see whenever he comes on, he's hungry for the ball. He wants to play. I think when we actually played Forest a couple of months ago, he had like one of our first shots on target when he came on as a sub. So he clearly shows something, but I have to put him in mid because he just has not, again, had enough game time.
And if you've got to give a message to Conte about Jed Spence, what would it be?
He exists. Please play him.
I love that. That might have to turn into a YouTube short, you know. Richarlison, what are you saying on him?
With Richarlison, the price tag you have to take into
Hmm.
consideration. We might have overpaid a bit. It was 50 plus 10 in add-ons, so 60 if it ever gets hit.
Hmm.
Especially with his injuries, he hasn't played too much, but when he has, he's been really good, especially that Marseille game where he bagged his two first goals for the club and first two in the Champions League. The
Hmm.
problem with Richarlison, I think he's played out of position too
Hmm.
much. He's more of a number nine than a winger, and obviously you're not going to drop Kane unless he's injured. So he
Hmm.
never actually really gets the chance to play as that sole striker. So you see with Brazil, he plays as a number nine and he bags nearly every other game. He's a good player. So I'll put him in mid,
Okay.
but I think he just needs a fair shot at his natural position.
Hmm. Then we have Oliver Skip.
Skip, again, another academy product similar to Tanganga. The last few games he's not been great, but that doesn't reflect his ability. He's still got ability. He's a good player. I'll probably put him in mid because I wouldn't want to sell him. He's homegrown. He
Hmm.
sort of suits that quota role, but there's definitely a player there. He just maybe he's going through a rough patch at the moment. I'm not sure.
Fair enough. We've got two left now. The first one of these is Perisic.
Perisic, when we signed him, again we snatched him from Chelsea, I think it was.
Hmm.
Surprised that we actually managed to get him. To be fair, maybe Conte had some involvement with that. When he came in, he was a world class left wing back, statistically one of the best in the world. I think it was, or top five leagues.
Hmm.
Um, for Spurs, he hasn't really cut it. I think his best game might have been against Palace the other day,
Okay.
where he got a good assist and he was making some decent balls. Um, Again, for Croatia, he plays in a little bit of a different role. He plays a bit further up the pitch, and that's why I think Son. I've discussed this before. That's why I think Son isn't playing as well because him and Perisic are two similar players. They're
Okay.
always making the same runs and stuff like that. That's why they harm each other. But I'll put Perisic in. I'll put him in good for now
Okay.
because I don't think he's been a mid-level player. Like if we look at the ones I've put at the moment, I
Yeah.
think he's been better than them definitely.
Okay. And then last but not least, we have the man that scores a lot of goals. It's Harry Kane.
Yeah, he's always got going goated,
Yeah, I
doesn't he?
thought it might be
Really,
goated.
he he's where our goals come from, especially with Son not performing. Um, he academy product. We love him. Everyone loves him. If he scores at least one against Arsenal, he joins our top goal scoring record of all time. So
Mhm.
anything below goated is wrong.
Fair enough. All right. Well, there is the Tottenham Hotspur tier list. If you watched this as a video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and like the video as well. If I said that, but comment all of those things, and I'll catch you all again in the next one. If it's the podcast, keep listening. We are back from all the 3 videos. I hope you enjoyed those 3 videos. And we are back. Just sit down and discuss the semi-breaking news that's come out as we are recording this. QSI, the owners of PSG and quite a couple of other clubs as well, they've had an exploratory meeting with Daniel Levy today over acquiring a minority share in Tottenham. As a Tottenham fan, what do you think about this news?
Yeah, it's nice to see that somebody actually wants to invest in our club, especially with our current owners. So yeah, I think it was Jacobs Ben that got the exclusive news, so credits to him for it. But yeah, so there was reportedly sort of talks with, well, very early talks with the owners of PSG and a couple of other clubs, as you mentioned, about getting a minority stake in the club. That doesn't mean we'd have new owners, so Spurs fans, don't get your hopes up. But again, it could just be some sort of cash injection into the club that we need to push us forward. A deal like this could potentially see Conte say, look, we're moving forward. I might sign the new contract now because I know I'm going to have the backing. I know I'm going to have more money. And hopefully it gives the current owners of the club a bit of a push in the back to say, look, we need to start investing because people aren't very happy about it. And we're wanting, they know, the current owners know that we want to get rid of them. So if they start investing, then they know, oh, actually, they might be back on our side again.
Okay, so how would you feel about it personally? Because obviously these guys are the owners of PSG. They already own a big club. I get it would be a minority stake, and obviously we don't know how much that is, but if that's a couple of percent, you could be looking at a point where, you've got 2 fairly big clubs, one that wins trophies and one doesn't, but 2 fairly big clubs that, they then own, obviously majority and minority. But could there be new dealings going on with PSG? There'd also be a new form of partnership there. How would you feel about being linked with PSG and also being linked with the owners who aren't particularly popular?
It's a difficult one. You've got to put it into 2 categories with morally and sporting. So for sporting wise, I'd love it. I'd love to be, again, as you mentioned, it's essentially a partnership with PSG almost because we are linked in that way. Like City and some of their City groups and other clubs that they own as well. So I would like it from a sporting perspective because it allows for that new investment into the club. It might even turn some players' heads and think, look, they've got a big backing. They know that they're possibly got money to spend on bigger players, meaning we can go further in competitions. So it's good. But then from a moral perspective, obviously the Qatari sports investment people aren't liked as much because where their money come from and things like that, which is a different equation. So sportingly, yeah, I'd be happy to have them, but morally, maybe not so much.
Fair enough. And then just to round off this full Spurs deep dive of a podcast, how's the rest of the season going to go? Premier League finish, Cups, Champions League, everything.
Yeah, so I think the Premier League will end up with some European football. If I'm being honest, and Spurs fans won't want to hear it, it's probably not going to be Champions League. I'd be surprised if it was, just because the way we're playing currently. Don't get me wrong, things could change next week. Conte signs a new contract, we spend 200 million or whatever. I just don't think it's going to happen. And obviously, hindsight is always great, but
yes,
I think for the Champions League, AC Milan, we may get past. I want to be optimistic, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't because the way that they're playing, Giroud is class as well still. So he could happily bag a couple against us. As for FA Cup, which is the only other trophy that we're still realistically could win, we might go decently far, but I just don't have the confidence, especially with the club it is at the moment. I don't have the confidence that we'll win it because why would the players be fighting out 100% if Conte could be gone within a couple of months? It doesn't make much sense. So really the club and Conte need to come together and say, we're either doing this fully, we're 100% in, or we might as well just sack it off now because is there any point in staying 6 months if you know you're just going to leave anyway?
Yeah, and especially with Poch being available now, that could be something the club could look at.
who
It's been a
knows, he
pleasure
could
to
get
have you on.
picked up.
Yeah, he could get picked up, to be fair, and that's... I can't see it happening though. Levy's a clever guy. He'll have gone to Poch, he'll have gone, look, we want you, if he does, which I presume he probably does, look, we want you, stay around, and I think Poch probably would stay around.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, he's probably already got him on a contract saying that he'll sign for us in 2 years. It wouldn't surprise me.
Probably, to be fair. It's been a pleasure, though. A deep dive into Tottenham Hotspur. We still haven't solved the age-old issue of trophies. So we'll have to save that one for another night, because I think that will probably take quite a few hours. But it's been a pleasure to have you on. For people that don't know, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram it's the _Spurs_news, or just type in Spurs news, I should come up. Yeah, hopefully this year will be a really big year for the account. Been going for 3.5 years now.
Yeah.
Quickest Spurs news. I get what I can to you from reliable sources. So yeah, check me out.
Yeah, to be fair, whenever I look, there's multiple posts a day, and that's mad work rate. So fair play to you, mate. Thank you for everyone at home for watching this podcast, and I'll catch you all again in the next one. See ya.